The rain is relentless, I wish I could say. I had grown accustomed to it, that the endless gray skies and the rhythmic drumming on my roof had become nothing more than background noise. But that would be a lie. The truth is, the rain terrifies me, and what lurks within it terrifies me even more. I wasn't always like this. I used to love the rain, the way it smelled, the way it danced on the pavement. But something changed. Something happened. And now, when the first drop falls, I bolt my doors, pull the curtains tight, and wait. Because I know what's out there. It all began in 2015 when I was 23, a nature enthusiast, obsessed with the untamed wild. I was studying environmental science, eager to make a difference. My childhood had been spent wandering through the woods, chasing shadows and imagining unseen creatures lurking beyond the trees. As an adult, I wanted to protect those very trees and the secrets they held. So, when my professor proposed an extra credit assignment, a solo trek into an isolated stretch of forest to study its ecosystem, I jumped at the chance. A few days, alone, in nature, sounded perfect, refreshing. I couldn't have been more wrong. The trail I chose was far from civilization, winding deep into the heart of an ancient woodland. It was rarely traveled except by seasoned hikers or the occasional park ranger. That solitude was exactly what I craved. I packed only what I needed: a tent, a sleeping bag, supplies to last a few days. The forecast predicted light showers, but nothing significant. I convinced myself I could handle a little rain, but the rain was never the problem. The first day was uneventful, even peaceful. The towering trees formed a dense canopy above me, filtering the fading sunlight into a golden haze. Birds sang unseen, and the scent of damp earth filled my lungs. I documented plant life, took notes, sketched fungi. Everything felt right. Then the second night came. The drizzle started just after sundown, gentle at first. But as the hours passed, it transformed into a relentless downpour, drumming against my tent. Wind roared through the branches, sending leaves and debris skittering across the forest floor. And then, beneath the storm's fury, I heard it. Not the wind, not an animal, something
deliberate.
slow, heavy, footsteps crouching in the wet earth, circling my tent. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. My hands tightened around my flashlight. The rain battered my shelter, masking all but the faintest sounds outside. Then a whisper, so close, I swore it was just outside. The thing nodded on walls.
You don't belong here.
Ice crawled through my veins. I sat motionless, every nerve screaming for me to run. But when I finally unzipped my tent and peered into the darkness, there was nothing, just the endless rain and the ancient trees standing as silent witnesses. But the ground was different. The mud was disturbed, and there, surrounding my tent were footprints. Footprints that hadn't been there before. Trails of the forest seemed smaller under the heavy shadows of dusk. The towering trees stretched endlessly, their limbs clawing at the dimming sky. The wind whispered between them, carrying secrets only the woods could understand. "Hey, Joan, want to take a trip down to the preserve with me?" I had asked her earlier that week, just as the final school bell tolled. Joan was a quiet girl, reserved but kind. She had long brunette hair that cascaded just past her shoulders, and soft green eyes that seemed to hold secrets of their own. She wasn't the type to draw attention, but those who noticed her couldn't look away. Beautiful, but silent. A passing joke or compliment would earn a gentle smile, but she rarely responded. That made most people move on. But for me, it only made me want to be closer to her. We had been friends for a while. Whether there was something deeper between us, I couldn't say. All I knew was that we understood each other in a way that didn't need words. "Yeah, of course. Just tell me when," she had answered with that soft smile. I smiled back. I hoped this trip would turn out well. Days passed, and we prepared. We spent our free time gathering food, supplies, and tents. Soon enough, we were packed and ready to go. My small car carried us east, our bags tied down on the roof. The drive took hours, and by the time we arrived, the afternoon sun was beginning its descent. "I thought you said it'd be quiet," Joan teased as we stepped out. The park was livelier than I had anticipated. Families setting up picnic lunches, dogs bounding along the trails, laughter filling the air. I rolled my eyes. "Trust me, these people aren't hiking deep in. It'll get quiet. I promise." She gave a playful snicker as I unloaded our heavy packs from the car. They were bulky, but manageable. She adjusted the straps over her shoulders, waiting for me to take the lead. As we approached the trail's entrance, a park ranger stood nearby, leaning against a post. He was middle-aged, fit, and looked like he had spent years navigating these woods. "You two heading in?" he asked casually. "Yeah, that's all right, right?" I asked. "Of course. Just let me know your names and take my card. If you need anything, call down to the station. There are a couple of ranger shacks deeper in. Feel free to use them, just clean up after yourselves." He handed me a small business card. His friendly but knowing smile felt oddly reassuring. "Thanks, I'm Lily, and this is Joan." Joan nodded, and the ranger returned the gesture. "Well, Lily and Joan, enjoy yourselves out there. We'll be patrolling, so don't be afraid to say hi." With that, he stepped aside, and we entered the trail. The first half of the day passed in quiet appreciation. There was something freeing about walking with no time constraints. No deadlines, no worries, just us and the wilderness. As the sun sank lower, the air grew crisp, the temperature dropping steadily. The wind wove through the trees, brushing cool fingers against our skin. "Let's find a clearing to settle into," Joan suggested, her head tilting as she scanned the path ahead. I nodded, glancing at the sky. The clouds were thickening. The rain was coming. As the last rays of sunlight flickered through the dense canopy, we pressed forward, our boots crunching against the damp forest floor. The air had grown heavier, thick with the scent of moss and wet earth. Somewhere in the distance, a bird let out a single sharp cry before falling silent. deeper we went, the more the world around us seemed to shrink, swallowed by the towering trees and the hushed whispers of the wind. "There," I said, pointing ahead to a small clearing nestled between gnarled roots and overgrown brush. It wasn't much, but it was flat enough to set up camp. Joan nodded, already slipping off her pack. "We should get the tents up before it gets too dark." We worked quickly, unrolling our tents and securing them to the ground. The process was routine, muscle memory guiding our hands as we hammered in stakes and stretched rain covers over the fabric. Within minutes, our temporary home was ready. Joan dropped onto a fallen log, stretching her legs as she pulled a granola bar from her pack. "This place is actually kinda nice," she mused between bites. I sank onto the ground opposite her, feeling the day's hike settle into my bones. "Yeah, haven't seen many animals though." Unwrapping my own snack, I glanced at her, and then beyond her, into the darkening forest. Something moved. It was small, no bigger than a football, crouched low to the ground. The shadows swallowed its form, but I could see the way it shifted, pulsing as if the darkness itself was alive. I squinted, trying to focus, but in the blink of an eye, it was gone, vanished, like it had never been there at all. "You okay?" Joan's voice pulled me back. She was watching me with mild concern, her head tilted slightly. I realized I was frozen mid-bite, my granola bar hovering inches from my mouth. Forcing a laugh, I shook my head. "Yeah, thought I saw something in the woods. Probably just a rabbit." Joan turned to look, but the forest was empty. Still, an uneasy feeling settled into my gut. We finished our meal in silence, the crackling fire between us the only sound. After extinguishing the flames, we crawled into our tents. The night was long. The rain came in waves, soft at first, then growing stronger, the droplets drumming against the fabric above me. I drifted in and out of sleep, each rustle outside sending a jolt of awareness through my body. And then, just before dawn, I heard it. A soft, slithering sound, something rubbing against the base of my tent. Not the wind, not the rain, something alive. Joan scoffed and I laughed. The rain was little more than a drizzle at that point, but it was clear it was only going to get worse. "Let's hurry and find a place to set up." She picked up the pace, transitioning from a brisk walk to a jog, moving effortlessly down the trail. I followed close behind, my boots sinking slightly into the damp earth with every step. For a while, it felt like we weren't going to find a clearing anytime soon. The thick canopy above trapped the gloom of the approaching storm, and the air smelled of wet soil and distant lightning. We were already soaked, the dampness creeping into our clothes and skin. Then, as if mocking our struggle, the sky split open. A violent clap of thunder roared above us, and the rain came down in sheets, sudden, forceful, and unrelenting. "Over there!" Joan's voice barely cut through the storm. I followed her gaze and saw it. A small, weathered cabin just off a narrow side trail. She bolted toward it without hesitation. I ran after her, my legs straining against the thickening mud. Each step sent splatters up my shins, the earth growing slick beneath my feet. Then, something snagged my boot. I barely had time to react before I was yanked forward, crashing face first into the mud. For a few moments, I just lay there, stunned, cold, and disoriented. The rain pounded against my back, the storm swallowing the world around me. I blinked and forced myself up onto my elbows, looking down at what had tripped me. At first it seemed like just a tree root, slick with mud and half buried in the ground. But as I squinted against the rain, I saw it shift. It wasn't a root, it was moving. I don't think so, but it looks weird, I muttered, staring at the mud-coated object as the rain hammered against it. Joan stepped up beside me, peering through the fogged-up glass. "Is that a broken tree root?" she suggested. I could only shrug. Whatever it wasn't moving. "Wait!" Joan's voice sharpened. "Look at the color!" I narrowed my eyes, watching as the relentless downpour washed away layers of mud, revealing what lay beneath. The more the rain cleared it, the more unnatural it looked. The pale shade of gray sent an unease curling in my stomach. "Oh my God!" Joan gasped, a hand flying up to cover her mouth. "What?" I turned to her, my brow furrowed in confusion. She pointed. "Look at the end of it." I followed her gaze, and my breath hitched. Fingertips. My pulse pounded in my ears. The more I looked, the clearer it became. A hand, an arm reaching out of the earth, frozen as if grasping for something. My stomach turned. Jesus Christ! Joan stepped back, shaking her head. "We need to call the Rangers." I fumbled into my pocket, pulling out a soaked but still readable business card. She snatched it from my fingers and dialed immediately, pacing the creaky wooden floor as the call connected. "Hello, I'd like to report something on one of the trails." Her voice wavered slightly. She turned to me suddenly. "Lily, check the number on the cabin." I hesitated, casting another uneasy glance at the eerie, lifeless hand outside, then pushing away the creeping feeling pressing against my skin. I moved toward the door. The moment I stepped outside, the air felt heavier. The rain was colder, sharper, biting into my skin. I turned my head toward the hand. It looked even stranger up close. The skin was smooth, almost too smooth. No hair, no imperfections. The nails were clean, neatly trimmed. But the water that gushed over it, something about the way it absorbed into the flesh unsettled me. Like the skin wasn't just wet, but drinking in the rain. I forced my gaze upward, scanning the cabin wall. 17, I called over my shoulder, the number barely leaving my lips before a sudden, deafening crack split the air. I jolted, heart hammering. Turning back, my stomach twisted. The hand was gone. I blinked rapidly, trying to process what I was seeing or not seeing. The ground was disturbed, the mud rushing down the path, but there was no trace of the limb that had been there just moments before. I swallowed hard and bolted back inside. "The number 17, I blurted out, slamming the door behind me. "But," my voice faltered, "it's gone. The arm. It's not there anymore." Joan's eyes widened as she relayed the update to the dispatcher. After a tense pause, she exhaled and lowered the phone. "They told us to stay put. The storm's not letting up anytime soon. A ranger is on the way and the police have been notified, but it'll take a while to reach us." I ran a hand through my damp hair, glancing back toward the window, half expecting to see something or someone lurking outside. I hope it didn't just wash away, I murmured. Joan came up beside me, her expression mirroring my unease. I'm sure they'll be able to follow the mudslide. She forced a small, reassuring smile. On the bright side, the rain cleaned you up a bit. I looked down at myself. My clothes were still streaked with dirt, but my skin was noticeably cleaner. I guess that's something, I muttered. Come on, Lily. Joan nudged me playfully. Let's at least make ourselves comfortable. I'm locking the door, just in case. In case of what? I shot her a wary look. She hesitated. I don't know. In case there's a killer out there. I deadpanned. She averted her gaze and quietly flipped the lock. The cabin felt smaller now, the dim light casting long shadows along the wooden walls. After a few minutes of tense silence, we laid out our rations, neither of us particularly hungry, but both knowing we needed the energy. Once we finished eating, we wordlessly set up for the night. I caught Joan glancing at the window more than once, her movements rigid. You okay? I asked. She exhaled through her nose. I just feel weird, like we're being watched. A chill ran down my spine. She yanked the pillowcases off both of our pillows and walked to the windows, draping them over the glass. I just don't want anything looking in at us while we sleep. I didn't argue. Collapsing onto my bedroll, I stared up at the wooden ceiling, listening to the relentless drum of rain against the roof. Joan settled in beside me, shifting restlessly. For a while, the only sound was the storm. And then, a creak. Not from inside, from outside. The oppressive silence seemed to stretch through the night, as if the very air itself was saturated with the evil we had witnessed. Every memory of that creature, the hand emerging from the earth, the ranger's mouth being deformed by fingers that didn't belong to this world, clung to my mind. I tried to push the thoughts away, to drown the images and distractions, but they never fully went away. What haunted me even more was the fact that even though I was back in the safety of what should have been normal life, I still felt it. That feeling of being watched, the unsettling sensation that something was waiting, hidden just beyond the surface. It wasn't just the forest anymore, it was inside me, inside my thoughts. Every time it rained, I couldn't shake the feeling that something in the world was wrong. The head, those black eyes, they weren't just memories. They were a presence. They lingered in the back of my mind, relentless, as if they were always there, waiting for me to acknowledge them. Joan and we didn't talk much anymore. After everything that happened, it was as if the world we had known was no longer the same. Our connection, the bond we had, shattered in a way that words couldn't fix. We tried to go back to normal, but it was impossible. The silence between us wasn't comfortable anymore. We didn't need to speak to know that something in each of us had changed, something that could never be undone. I never asked her if she saw the same things I did, if she felt the same creeping dread that I couldn't shake, but I could see it in her eyes. When it rained, when the storms came in, she would look around nervously as if expecting to see something out of the corner of her eye. And I knew, without a doubt, that she had heard it too. The scratching, the scraping sound that seemed to echo through the walls, It wasn't just my imagination. It was real. The authorities, they couldn't or wouldn't believe us. They called it a mudslide, an accident. They chalked it up to emotional distress. Their disbelief was almost worse than the event itself. It made me feel as though the world was closing in on us, trying to make us forget what had happened, as though erasing it from history would somehow make it less real. But it wasn't gone. It was still there. We were labeled as unreliable witnesses, our story dismissed as nothing more than a bad dream. But that head, those eyes, they weren't a dream. They weren't a figment of our imagination. They were real, and they were watching us. Now, when it rains, I can't help but wonder if somewhere deep in the woods, that same head still watches from the shadows. If somewhere just out of sight, that thing waits, biding its time, waiting for someone else to pass by. Sometimes when I'm alone at night, I hear it, a soft scratching. It's faint at first, almost like the wind, but it gets louder. The sound of something or someone trying to get in. I can't tell if it's my mind playing tricks on me, if it's the echo of that night, or if it's something real, something out there, still hunting. Joan and I don't speak of it anymore. We don't even acknowledge it when it happens. But I see the way her eyes dart nervously when the storm clouds roll in. The way she flinches at every sound that seems to echo in the quiet. I don't have to ask her if she's heard it too. I know she has, waiting for the next soul to pass by. And when they do, when they walk too close to the path, those hands will reach up, hold them under, and bury them deep into the earth. And it will start all over again.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. Also, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new content. Let me know in the comments what you liked, what you didn't, and any constructive feedback you have. Love to hear from you. Your support and input help make future videos even better. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.